Okay, welcome everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. My name's Joss Costa. I'm with the SI London team, and today I'm going to be your facilitator or your coach in learning about actor mapping. So this is how we think about the people, the actors, the stakeholders within a system that we might be interested in changing. So today's session, you may have been here before. This is part of a series on the SI guides. So these are a series of about 21 guides on how we do systems innovation, all the ideas, tools, methods, and so forth. So some of you would have been here before. We do this every month. We're now into about the 10th or so session in this series of about 21. So if you're interested in those guides, you can find them there. I'll give you a link now to this mirror board, and you can join when you're ready. I'll show you in a minute what we'll be doing. So here's the link to the mirror board. You can join when you're ready. As I say, if you're looking for the guides, just click there. It'll take you to those. All the content today is taken from our canvas and our guide. This guide here is the actor mapping guide. So everything we talk about today, you'll find there. It'll go more in depth if you want to take a look at that afterwards. Also, there's a canvas for running workshops and so forth. You can find the link there. There's also another canvas that's closely related. We won't be doing it this evening. This subject's closely related to network analysis. So we have a canvas for that also, which would be a similar sort of approach to thinking about the actors, the network of actors in the system we're interested in changing. So that's that. You can find all that on the website there. Just for me to say, first, what we'll be covering. So it's a 1-hour session this evening. It's being live streamed onto YouTube and therefore recorded. Firstly, we're going to, quick overview. What are we talking about here? Why is it important on the first board there? The second board, we'll look at what's kind of involved in building a stakeholder map, different dimensions there, how we might go about it. Thirdly, we'll take a bit of a case study. We'll be looking at mining and the introduction of a mine to a rural community and all the different stakeholders that may be affected by that. And we'll be posting up these stakeholders and thinking about that so that we get an idea of how to do this in practice. We'll then kind of delve into actually exploring more of these stakeholders and how they're looking at the world, their incentives, their power dynamics, and so forth. We'll explore that by working on the board also with the same case study. Finally, we'll look at this here. We'll start clustering them around, if we're trying to make a change in the system, which actors would be in favor of this, which not, how important are they, how closely related are they to the changes that are underway. So that's what we'll be looking at. And I invite you to join me. I'm just going to briefly give a quick overview here to what we're talking about whilst we still collect people. So, actor maps are a kind of map designed to reveal the network of people and organizations within a given system and how they're interrelated. The aim is to gain a deeper understanding of the stakeholders' values, models, incentives, and the power dynamics in the system. This is done by creating a map consisting of the various individuals and organizations that have a role in the system we're interested in changing. With actor mapping, we're asking who are the individuals or organizations that have the influence in determining the patterns and outcomes of the system, and who are influenced by them in turn. These stakeholders have a stake in the outcomes of the organization and thus an interest in shaping events according to their stake. To be responsible in our systems change initiative, we must be first aware of these actors, their perspectives and interests. So this section is part of the overall process we have around systems innovation, and the section is about systems analysis, right? It's understanding before we go and make interventions in this system, before we try and change it, we want to understand the system. Last time we talked about systems mapping out the different elements and interrelationships. This time, obviously, there are people in this system, and we need to understand them before we actually go and make any interventions. So that's what we're doing here. part of that broader process. So why actor mapping? Why do we want to do this? Involvement. Start to recognize who will be affected by the change process and who needs to be involved in it. Opportunities. Find opportunities for alliances, collaborations, and recognize potential points of conflict. Identify gaps. Identify where gaps to the flow of information or resources are as potential intervention points. Adoption. Understand how an adoption process may take place, who would likely resist it and who might likely promote it. Explore perspectives. Build up a better understanding of the system by looking at it from different perspectives of the actors. And communications, to understand the mental models and values of the actors so that we can better speak their language. So that's why we're interested in this. It's all part of us understanding better the system before we intervene in it. So these are some aspects here. We're obviously taking a kind of a holistic approach to, you may have heard stakeholder analysis, and you may be familiar with that. Traditionally, it's quite reductive in just trying to understand, which actors are going to be for or against the change we're trying to make, and which actors have power to make it happen or prevent it. Here, we're trying to take a more holistic perspective on really actually understanding these actors in the system and how it's going to influence them. So these are a number of key considerations. Multidimensionality. People are multidimensional, right? They're not just these rational agents that are making, very calculated kind of trade-offs according to some money or something like this. They have values, they have a worldview, incentives, power, etc. And we have to factor in these different dimensions. Multi-scale. To understand potential externalities, we need to consider actor groups on different levels, from the individual to organizational, but also whole ecosystems, right? It's playing out on change, large changes, systems changes play out on many different levels. Multiple perspectives. To build up a more comprehensive picture of the whole, we need to try and view the system from many different dimensions of the actors within it. So that's part of the systems thinking concepts. Famous quote, you first become a systems thinker when you start looking at the world, looking at something from different perspectives. You may have heard the elephant analogy of all the different people holding in different parts, and we're trying to shift our understanding of the system up from our individual perspective to a broader understanding of the system by being able to look at it from different perspectives. And stakeholder analysis or stakeholder mapping is going to help us with that. Okay, great. So now we're going to take a look at an approach to going about doing a stakeholder map. And there are many possible ways you would go about this. So this isn't the only way of doing it. As I said, you could take a more kind of network analysis approach to this, which we aren't doing here. This is a more kind of lightweight map. So here we're looking at three dimensions. Firstly, we're going to try and understand generally who are these actors in the system, right? So we're trying to get that bigger picture view. Whatever kind of system, might be a food system, it might be a political system, a culture, maybe to do with homelessness in your city. Who are all those actors that are actually this has relevance for, who are involved there? We want to get that bigger picture first, and then we're going to zoom in a bit and actually try and understand those actors individually, right? What are their values? What are their mental models? What are their incentives? Their power dynamics and so forth. And then thirdly, we want to think about how they relate to the given change, the given initiative that we're undertaking, right? So here we're just understanding what's going on in the system. Here we're starting to ask, okay, if we're doing a systems change, trying to make change happen in this system, who's going to be with us? Who's going to be against us? Who are the important people and so forth? So you can see here, we'll look at it like this. On the left here, we'll have these people who are maybe against it, and the people on the right here who are for it. And then up at the top here, we can see these people who are more influential and these people who are less influential, right? We want to understand these things. Obviously, these people up here, we want to play, they can create a lot of problems for us because they're quite powerful and they really don't like what we're doing or what's happening. These people here could be strong allies, so on and so forth. So when we go about the actual, we also want to understand, how directly they are a part of the system that's we're involved in changing, right? Some of the actors will be right in the center here. Some will be more out on the fringes. So that's another consideration. So we'll be looking at that as we go along. We'll be actually trying to do something like this, where we actually take our actors and we post them up, the people in here, right at the center of this system we're trying to change. You can see the bigger ones are the more influential ones. The pluses are there for the change. The minuses, they're against this change. So that's that. As I say, it's just one approach. There's many others you could take. Today's going to be quite hands-on. Actually, we're not going to do a lot of talking and so forth. We're actually going to take this little case study here. And this is a case study of a mining company. That's where I grew up in Ireland. I come from a rural community, and a mining company moved in there, a big multinational mining company. Back in the 1990s, they discovered zinc in the local area. And this corporation moved in, they got planning permission, they wanted to set up their mine, and for the next 10, 20 years, they started extracting this zinc and making big changes in the community, to water, to land usage, to transportation, to electricity, so on and so forth. Before they got the planning permission, there was a number of actors in this system that were for it, and a number of actors that were against these changes, right? This is going to be a big change for the local community. A lot of money coming in, a lot of new jobs, but also potentially pollution, so on and so forth. So let's have a think about this one, right? Who do we think are the actors in this system? This is the first stage going back here, where we're trying to get this bigger picture, right? Who are the actors in the system that we should be considering that are going to have a stake or an interest in this? I've posted up some little signposts here to help us start thinking about this. Up here, we can put the social and political factors. Might be the local county council, the local authorities. Over here, business and economy. There'll be businesses in the local villages that are going to be affected by this. Industry, there's a power grid there, and this mine's going to need a lot of electricity, or the roads and so on and so forth. This ore is going to have to be transported out. Over here, we can see land and environment, water, pollution, so on and so forth. So let's jump in, grab a sticky. Hopefully you know how to do this at this stage. There's a sticky on the left here. You put it down like this, and you simply type away. So up here, local shop owners. I think those are the stakeholders, some stakeholders that are going to have an opinion about this. They're going to be affected by this. So please do that. I'll get the link for you again and share it now when you're ready. We'll take 5 or so minutes to do that. If you have questions, you can drop them into the chat here, and I'll try and pick them up as I go along. If you're having problems with Miro, let me know. I'll give you a hand. Probably going to be companies down here that have to make all this machinery, right? Is that going to happen in the local area? There's going to be logistics, right? How are we going to transport all this technology and so forth to the mine? Many different factors involved here. If you're not able to access the mirror board, you can post in the chat and I'll post a sticky up for you. You can also try to draw some connections too. You just pull out a line like this, and you make it like that. And then if you click on the text, you could type in what sort of connection it is. You know, it might be flow of ideas or of money or whatever it is. It's a little bit difficult. We would normally do this in a smaller group. You definitely want to do these in a larger group like this. It's a little bit difficult because there's a lot of people and it gets a bit messy. In a smaller group and you had more time and you're getting more rigorous, you'd definitely start clustering and connecting these.
Hey, Joss. How are you differentiating business and economy from industry?
Yeah, so industry is actually physical things, right? So these are power lines, these are roads, these are manufactured goods, they're tractors, they're mining equipment. Business economy is, you know, actual business models. It's things like, you know, people have shops. It's the people who are giving loans. It's so on. Yeah, you know, local chamber of commerce, whatever it is. Yeah. Okay, let's take a look for the sake of time. What do we have here? So social political factors. Public, is this transport? Potential need for new public transport services. Yes. So this would be more like we're talking about the political and governance organization. This is like, you know, the Ministry of Transport or something like that. Okay, local tax base. Yes, we might even kind of put that halfway over here, kind of between economy and society. Yeah, so definitely these guys over here, politicians, so forth, they're going to be interested in there's potential for lots of tax revenue here. Okay, schools. Yes. And how do you think schools? How are schools going to be affected by this? Anybody want to say? Mothers and families. Anybody want to say how are they going to be affected?
I put that on. I think that a lot of the time in the stories of mining towns that I've heard anyway, I haven't had direct experience, that families getting sick is the sort of first sign of something really going wrong. And the impacts are often felt on that sort of wide public health. Nobody knows what's causing this illness or this contamination of the water or whatever. And it's almost like a canary in a coal mine type of feeling.
Yeah, it's an interesting one actually, because I'd say it's a little bit, I think it's hugely affected. Families are going to be hugely affected by this because of employment and income. And you know where these people are going to work and so forth, and how long they're working. And actually, these miners are sometimes working night shifts. I know one of the people who's working in our local mine. He had to work, you know, during the night and so forth. So actually, families are going to be hugely affected. But it's almost a secondary effect from other things. But yeah, good one. Okay, so supports. local neighborhoods, local authority. Yeah, the mayor is definitely going to have something to say about this. He's going to have some kind of position. He's definitely going to feel affected. We've got families again. Soil health. Yeah, we're going down to the environment here. Opportunities for alternative land use. Water, definitely, big one. Air quality, to some extent. Animal habitats, views of nature, local wildlife for sure. Watersheds. Okay, very good. Land stability could also be like maybe it'll be over here, you know, price of land. And these mining companies, they go in and they buy up all this land, right? So people, I guess that'd be over here somewhere, right? The fact that all this land purchasing actually has a big effect here, that these farmers get brought out, their land gets brought out, and they get quite wealthy from all of this, right? So that's definitely going to affect things here. So over in business and economy, local tourism companies, yeah, probably not going to like this. It's not going to look so good, this mine, if there's a local tourist industry going on. Local shop owners, financial stakeholders, suppliers, transporters in and out, education and training. Yeah, there's a whole secondary market here, right? You think about this is the mine I'm thinking of in Ireland is a pretty big mine, and it's a very small community. And there's a lot of money and a lot of electricity, and there's a lot of things moving in and out, a lot of employment. So it's having a huge impact across this whole community, actually. So house builders, construction, yeah. How do you think they're looking at it? House builders, construction. Maybe want to talk about that? How are they affected?
That's me. If the more people come into the area, it may mean there's demand for more housing. So there may suddenly start to be more houses built. Yep.
Okay, great. Local labor market. Yeah, this is going to be a big one, isn't it? So, like, people are going to look at this and say, oh, there's a job there. I know one gentleman in our location, a family friend, he was a butcher, and he gave up being a butcher, shut his shop down, went and worked for the mine. He was working at night times, driving these machines, got very well paid, actually. These people are getting almost twice as much money as they were doing other jobs. Wasn't good for his health, though. He was sitting on a machine, not getting exercise and so forth, but it had a huge effect on the local labor market because they're paying much higher prices. Okay. Great, and then down here have some industry equipment, mining suppliers, delivery industry, employees, logistics companies, road and infrastructure is actually a big one, right? They've got to get all this ore out, and they're in a rural community, and the roads are pretty small normally, so they're going to have a big effect on the roads. And the roads get congested too. You've got these lorries coming in and out on small roads, so people don't like that. Just to give you an idea of kind of the impacts and all the people that are going to be affected by this, and then how are they looking at it, right? How's the mum who's taking her child to school in the morning looking at these lorries that are kind of clogging up the road and she can't get to school? So these are all the kind of effects, all the stakeholders that are involved here. Local Ramblers group, other companies in the supply chain. Yeah. Very good. Okay, so that's the bigger picture. Of course, we would draw up these connections if we had more time to discuss that and think about that. It becomes a bit of a mess when we do it in a large group like this, so we won't for the moment. But as I say, we might call this giga mapping. It's just trying to get everything out there, right? So we get that bigger picture. Okay, so we've done that. And as mentioned, the second step then would be to actually think about these actors. Now that we have them all posted up there, what do they actually care about, right? What actually are their values, their mental models, their incentive, their power, their capacity to actually affect things here? These are things we need to dig into. And it's kind of ethnographic studies. We need to actually, you know, if we're doing this properly, we'd want to go out there and talk to these people, want to tread in their shoes and actually live in that community for a while to see what it's really like. So to get to know the actors in the system through ethnographic studies. Ethnographic studies involve complete immersion of oneself in the lives, culture, or situation, the people or organizations we're interested in over some period of time, not just a snapshot. We enter and spend a significant amount of time in the real environment needed to be observed to gain insight into the actors, the context they find themselves in, within, how they behave in that environment. So if you're coming from a design thinking world, this is all about the kind of empathy and building up that user persona, understanding those people and what their real lives are like. So in the process, we try as best we can to not alter the context or project our meaning onto it. All right, so we have to really look at these people as they are and understand their lives as it is. In order to understand not just what people say, but also what they do, the researcher must observe people as they go about their daily activities without disruption. Over time, the insights drawn can be built up into a persona that captures key information while ensuring that it matches the underlying experience of the actors. So, like I say, this is just one way, and here we're looking at these three different dimensions. First, asking about culture, which is the question of values, right? Values really shape everything we do ultimately. Mental models to it frames how we're looking at the whole situation. Incentives, right? We know this is going to have a huge impact. These ones are a bit more subtle. Obviously, this culture and mental models, they're paradigm, right? They're deeply ingrained. They're sometimes difficult to see. These ones are more obvious ones, the incentives, where's the money flowing, and power, who actually has power in the system. So here, mental models and value, they shape, these are the foundations of how we see the world and act upon it to create the environment we inhabit. Values are like a compass that direct our lives. They guide us to what we move towards or away from by defining what is of higher or lower value. Values rank what is good or bad, better or worse, and in so doing, they give us a structure to our worlds and a compass, right? These rankings then work to motivate or demotivate us. To get a deep insight into the workings of the system we wish to change, we're going to have to map these out, visually represent the values and beliefs of the different actors. So one way of doing that is thinking about Maslow's hierarchy here, and where are these actors on this, right? A person who's up here in this kind of self-actualization is radically different from a person down here who's just trying to pay the bills, you know, just trying to get by from one week to the next. They'll be incentivized, they'll be motivated, they'll be influenced by a very different set of things. You know, the person up here probably not worried about money. They've probably already got enough money, so you're not gonna affect them very much with money. Down here, you know, they're gonna be hugely influenced by that. So this is really gonna shape how people are looking at the world and what they care about and what's gonna influence them and so forth. So we definitely wanna kind of check that. Where are these people on that? And people will be in all different spaces. So a whole pile of stuff to unpack there. We won't be able to get into it today. Obviously, value is very important. And then mental models. How are these people actually looking at the world? There are different ways. If we go back to those shop owners there, they're looking at the world. They're in their shops, right? And they hear about this mine moving in. And what do they think? Their first thing they think is, okay, this could be potential customers. So they're framing this whole mine thing very quickly into a commercial context, right? That's a paradigm. That's the way they're looking at the world. Someone else, the mother of a child, isn't looking at it like that. She's saying, well, will I be able to get my children to school in the morning with all these trucks on the road? So it's a different kind of paradigm, different way of looking at it. We need to be aware of that. The mental models and the values shape them are the foundations of how we see the world and how we act upon to create the environment we inhabit. To get a deep insight into the workings of the system we wish to change, we're going to have to also add these to the map to represent the values and beliefs of the different actors. So this would be building up, you know, a persona for the different actors. We'll be asking, well, we'll look at it now in a second, but we'll be doing this now in a second. So down here, actually, let's maybe just go to incentives first. Over here, incentives, right? We know this is gonna, well, Charlie Munger once said, show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcomes. So this is where economics can be quite a powerful framing. We know economists look at the world in terms of incentives and how people respond to incentives. And it's quite a, we know in this situation of the mining company, right? A lot of people are going to respond just depending on, you know, where's the money going? Is it benefiting them or not? So those are what we're talking about by incentives. Understanding the structure of incentives in the system is key to understanding how and why it operates and why it does what it does and what it does and why it continues on the same path, irrespective of what the stakeholders say. So quite often people say one thing and they do another. They do where the incentives are shaping them to do. And they say other things that they're maybe more aspirational but not connected with the reality. For every node on the system map, we'll see that the node can have a state that may be deemed better or worse for the actor, going back to the values. The actors who have a stake in a given node are motivated to improve their stake, improve their value as they define it. This creates a set of motives and direction for their decisions and actions. So this is another thing that we need to take into account. How are resources flowing through this? It's kind of, it's a bit, this whole thing, systems analysis, stakeholder analysis, it's a bit like being an investigative journalist. And you know the way journalists say, follow the money, right? That's what we're doing down here, following the money. Where are the incentives flowing and how's that going to affect the actors? It's a very powerful way of looking, an important way of looking at the system. Okay.
Josh,
Finally,
can I make a comment before we move on? I've put a link to my friend and colleague Luke Craven's work on system effects. The ethnographic studies are often sort of research done on people rather than with people, and the move towards more participatory, community-oriented work is very expensive. And so this is a powerful tool that allows individuals to give their sense of the system they're a part of and aggregates that into like a heat map that overlays both the sort of mindsets as well as the incentives of the actors.
Great. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, I know there's new software coming along. I think David Snowden and Cognitive Edge also do similar sort of work. Okay, yeah, as you say, right, this can be very time consuming, too time consuming. So software can be a powerful tool. Okay, so power, who actually, you know, power is about your kind of capacity to make other people do things irrespective of their will. And we know, you know, it comes in many different forms, but it's something we need to consider here. Who has what sort of power? And these are just a quick categorization. Experts, they have a certain power, right? We bring the professors onto the TV news in the evening and they say what they say, and we think they know all about it, so we accept what they say, and that's a sort of power, expert knowledge. Legitimacy, seem to be legitimate and a valid source of authority. Reward, capacity to provide others with incentives. Coercion, right? Capacity to exert force. Information, capacity to control the flow of information and so forth. Referent, referent, a charismatic form of power through attracting others and loyalty. So it's just a note, there are many different forms of power and ways of influencing other people in the way that you want them to act, and that plays an important part here. Okay, so let's maybe just take a little exercise on that. Here on this board, we've put them out again. Values, top left, mental models and power and incentives. So we're taking one of the stakeholders, one of the actors in the system, we'll say the farmers, right? This is a rural community, just like my parents had a farm in that location. And it was actually the farmers that got together in the end and resisted, my parents were part of it, resisted this mine getting planning permission. They took it to the High Court in Ireland and tried to prevent it from happening for a number of different reasons. They're very concerned about water, for example, but other ones. So these are obviously a major stakeholder in this situation we're dealing with. Let's jump into the mirror board again and feel free to think about whichever one you want or all of them and post up your stickies. What is the, you know, what kind of values do they have here? We could think about that Maslow's hierarchy, or we could take it from some other perspective. How are they, what's their mental model? What's the dominant paradigm they're coming from? What kind of power actually would they have in this system? You know, I just mentioned one, right? They are able to take these people, they're able to go to court and say, you know, we don't think this is going to work. Protest too, they can do that. And of course, they have certain incentives. So let's take 5 to 10 minutes to post up ideas there, we can start thinking about these different dimensions to the farmers in the system.
One question, please.
Yep.
How many personas you usually make? Because there can be over 50 stakeholders in the system.
Yep. Yeah, again, it goes back to your kind of capacity and resources and time and energy. I think everything in systems change because you're quite dealing with large systems. Everything with your stakeholder, with your systems analysis is going to be conditioned by the amount of time and energy and resources you have. And of course, talking about software, you can hopefully, find tools to make you more efficient in that. But ultimately, you're going to be constrained by time, by resources, so forth. So it's basically as much as you can do and can manage to do, right? More than that, more than 50, it might get too complex for you to really synthesize that and work with it.
Thank you.
Okay, let's take a look at some of these. Feel free to stay posting whilst we're talking. So talking about the values, What are the outcomes that these people want to see? Are they pursuing basic needs, food, security, economic welfare, or more abstract ones such as self-realization or aesthetics or so forth? Okay, so self-esteem. Somebody want to talk about that? These are the farmers we're talking about here. How do you think self-esteem would affect? It's kind of part of their identity, isn't it? So obviously, yeah, I mean, it's going to disrupt them. It may be part of the mental models, but, you know, farmers can be quite traditional. This is a local rural community, quite traditional. Big mining company come in, it's going to disrupt a lot of things. That might be more in the mental models, but their sense of place, their sense of identity, and maybe self-esteem in some way. Food production problems. Loss of land security. Anybody want to talk about that? Maybe this goes to identity too, kind of sense of control and ownership. Yeah.
So the land ownership, just if there's some sort of influence over sort of claiming of land for mining or production purposes, or sort of loss of usefulness of the land due to degradation, that could be an influence.
Yeah, but it could be also kind of disrupting long heritage of land being passed down from one generation to another, and the whole history and culture of the whole community. Yep. You know, if this was, we're talking about in the context of Ireland, but if this was, Australia or somewhere, we'd have a whole nother dimension of Aborigine communities disrupting their societies and culture and so forth. So loss of prestige as primary income for community. Yeah, interesting one. Was this you, Aaron, also? Or?
Yeah. Just if they were formerly the kind of the pillars of the community, then that would change the whole dynamic.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? This is really gonna disrupt the whole kind of culture here. As you say, money's going to be flowing out of this mine to the whole community, and just restructuring people's sense of purpose and which way's up and which way's down. Okay, generational land ownership. Yeah, I was touching upon that. Tradition. Okay, conservation, sustaining land resources, sovereignty of land. Yeah. Land quality. Someone want to talk on that?
Yeah, it was me. It's about how the mining can affect land stability. Maybe a lot of pollutions that's going to be less, not especially localized to the mine, but go around and be carried by rivers. A lot of mining processes use chemicals and all that, and that's what I wanted to refer to. Yeah. You said that the farmers would be concerned by that.
Yeah, I wonder if that goes in values there. Yeah, not sure. It may go kind of more in incentives. It depends. If these people really cared about the environment, that would be kind of a value that they hold. Mm-hmm. If it was just a question of, is my land going to be affected by pollution? I'd say it's probably more down in incentives. Yeah.
I was thinking about that it's something very important to them, but then another thing I put on is compensations and subsidies. That's the mirror in the incentive part. Yeah.
Yeah. So their land does get brought up, and they do get paid lots of money for this. So and a lot of these farmers, they don't really care very much about the environment, to be honest. So, okay. Change is good, yeah. So they're quite conservative, maybe, these people, and they're feeling this is just disrupting them. These are kind of values. They are part of their identity and so forth. Very good. And over here, mental models, respect of nature. okay, it's maybe closer to a value, but outsiders are bad news. Yeah, could be a kind of prejudice, xenophobia, and so forth. Give to nature and it gives back. Fear of change. I think we had that. Corporations will only look out for the bottom line. So this, what is this? Is this like a mental model? The farmers have a representation of the corporations, you think? Who is this?
Yeah, I wrote that one. I think that's an assumption and a mental model of like how the corporation will behave anytime they interact with them.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, these mental models, these paradigms do engender a lot of kind of assumptions that may or may not be true. So custodians of land over generation. Yeah, it's getting to kind of identity, autonomy, autonomous worker, high responsibility, justifying to environments and customers, connection to immediate impact of changes in environments they rely on for income, sense of stewardship of the land, identity of people and the community. Okay, yep. These are definitely things that are going to be there underneath the surface. Probably won't be talked about very much, right? But they'll be there for sure, shaping this whole, how this whole thing is playing out, and us being aware of this. It's kind of like the iceberg model, right? So we talked about that a while back. You know, a lot of this conversation, if we go there, it's probably going to happen at the event level. The farmers are probably going to say, we don't like this, or we do like that. When in fact, if we peel back the different layers, we go down the iceberg, we're going to find out, oh, this is coming from these deeper values, deeper mental models, and so forth. We understand those, able to work with them, we can potentially have much higher leverage here and so forth. Okay, incentives, subsidies. Yes, farmers get a lot of money from government. In Ireland, their main income is from the government. So the government could definitely shape subsidies and different forms of incentives if they wanted to. Money for trees to be used. Okay, land quality, maintain influence and social capital, keeping contracts with large supermarkets. Yeah. Food trends as national and international scale, e.g. less milk demand due to more vegan lifestyle. The health, yep. Maintain home and land price. Yeah, they would be considering that, wouldn't they? Like, how much is the land going to be worth if this mine moves in? Would it be worth more because they're buying up land, or would it be worth less because there might be pollution and so forth? They're definitely, farmers be considering that. Relationship with other area farmers, maintain influence and social capital. Okay, we'll stay going for the sake of time. Just quickly look here. So power dynamics, yeah, to some extent, experts, legitimate owner, yeah, they own this land, right? So they have a legal right to it. That's a source of power. Land use law, yeah, they're protected by law in some ways. Tapping the larger agriculture community for support. Yeah, they can get together, unions, right? And in Ireland, they do a lot of striking and a lot of protests, and their unions behind that. They go to the capital of Ireland and they drive their tractors in and their straw bales and do a lot of protesting and so forth. So that's a form of power. Can use threat to food production to influence others. Yeah, sometimes they dump milk, you know, to make a big protest about the price of milk or something like this. So they actually, end of the day, they kind of control the production of food. So it's an important one, right? And the rest of society cares about that in some way. So that's a source of power at the end of the day. Okay, great. Well done, everyone. That's kind of building our personas there. We just zoomed in on one of them, the farmers, be an important stakeholder here because they're owning this land, they're living there, they're going to be affected by this in almost every way. They may even be working in this mine, so on and so forth. So a key stakeholder. And that brings us to the final section here, which is to think about, you know, let me go back here. we kind of thought about what's the state of this system. Now we want to think about, if we're going to make a change, if there's going to be a change in the system, who's going to be for this and who's going to be against this, right? Really a key question at the end of the day. And of course, you want to know how influential they are. So different ways of doing this. We also, up here, we want to think about who's being directly influenced, directly impacted, indirectly influenced, and kind of part of the broader system. Yeah, so there might be, for example, a supermarket chain in Ireland. They aren't maybe in this area, so they aren't directly influenced by it, but you know, they think that there'll be more people working in that general area, you know, buying food and so forth. So that'd be kind of a systems influence. A direct one would be the people we just talked to, right? The farmers talked about. Okay, so that's what we're going to do now. We're going to try and make a little map like this. I'm going to take, try to take, it's a bit experimental. Let me see this one here and copy it across to our final board, where we'll be doing just what we looked at there. We're going to adjust these stickies. We're going to move them around, right? Try and put these key actors in the center. So the mining company, obviously, really important actor here. Local stores, not as directly affected as the mining company, who are right at the center of this, but still important. And then, as I said, maybe supermarkets out there or something. So let's take what we have and try and put it on the map where we think these people lie. So education and training, obviously being kind of secondary or third effects from this. The mining company, as we said in the center there. So try to grab a sticky and also try to scale it, right? If you think this is a really important actor in the system, the mining company, right? This is a big multinational corporation, lots of money, and they care a lot about this mine. They're really a key actor. And you might want to color it also. So we could do green. These guys obviously want this mine to happen. They're going to make money out of it. Other people, let's put them in orange or red if you think they're against this. So we're doing three things: grabbing the sticky, thinking about, is this really at the center of this nexus, this system we're thinking about changing? We put it in the center, or is it just slightly affected by it? We put it out on the edge. We're scaling the size of the sticky. If we think this is a really important influential actor in the system, we scale it up. If not, scale it down. And we're changing the color. If we think it's for this process of change, we put the green. If we think it's against, we'll put the red. It'll take a few minutes to do that. We could also leave it in yellow if we're not sure, if you think there'd be maybe a neutral, right? If they may or may not be against it, you could leave it in yellow. So let's also, we should try and stick to stakeholders, right? So land prices isn't a stakeholder. There is someone associated with that, you know, whoever's selling that land and buying it, but actually land price itself isn't a stakeholder. It's a factor affecting this. Okay, so interesting exercise, right? Sometimes it's not always clear. And we've also noted that some of the things we put up aren't really stakeholders. Obviously stakeholders, yeah, but if you put, land price or something, that's not a stakeholder. The people who auction land, they're a stakeholder. Actually, they should probably be closer in here, right? Imagine the auctioneers, people are going to transact this land. They're going to make a lot of money out of this. They're going to be for this, right? Education and training. Would they be for it or against it? Probably for it, because there could be good kind of opportunities here. Local media, we don't know. Local council, some of them, yes. Local community, we're not really sure. Some of them, yes, some of them, no. Roads and infrastructure, not really sure. Logistics companies, probably yes, right? A lot of people are going to make money out of this, so going to be happy with it. One of the stakeholders here that weren't happy with this was the local water scheme. They were concerned there's a tailings pond where they put a lot of I think it's the water coming out of the mine. They have to store it somewhere. And this was a potential hazard for the local water scheme. So these people are against it. The NGOs, local wildlife, they were against it. Local ramblers clubs, so on. Okay, so there we are. We've come to the end of the hour. Hopefully that was helpful. Let's just recap a little bit what we've covered today. We're looking at stakeholder mapping, and we initially talked about let's see it here. We wanted to get everyone up there on the board, think about who's involved. We did that on the first board there, and then we looked at the actors. So we did this first, post up all the actors in the system. We thought a little bit about how they might be interconnected. Then we kind of dug into, their personas, their worldview, and so forth. We did an experiment there with farmers. Obviously, it would take a lot more time with many different actors. And finally, we started to do this exercise where we're thinking about, who's going to be for this and against this, right? The mining company here going to be a huge actor in this, and others like the farmers who are going to be huge actors also. So it starts to give us a sense about what this looks like. Who's for it, who's against it, who's really important here, and whether they're directly affected or not. And then we could actually go and think about what we're going to do, how we're going to move forwards with all of this. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. A quick hour, a quick intro to stakeholder mapping. As I say, there are many different ways of doing this, so it's not the only one, but hopefully it gave you an idea of what's involved, right? So next month, we have the next training session actually listed on the website already. You can find it here. Click on that link. It's multi-level perspective. It's a very quite well-known model for thinking about transition processes in complex adaptive systems. And I hope to see you all there again next month. Thank you all for joining. Okay, guys, take care and happy Christmas, happy New Year. I hope it's a good one. Bye now.
Thanks, Josh.